in the corner.
That's right. Looks pretty good.
We didn't knock any dominoes down.
We had a good laugh on
We
that.
didn't hand out any rock claps.
Now, did you dance when you finished reading?
That's why they were not as excited with me as they were with Jenny.
I got reading. This was.
And you were dancing too?
It took me the whole song just to figure out the rhythm.
Get going.
Pretty good topic.
I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening to everybody. Hope everybody had a nice and restful spring break, and welcome back to the rest of this school year. We are going to start with an invocation from David Barnett from the New Life Assembly of God. Mr. Barnett.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your indulgence because my voice sounds about like it did at the end of the Bell Trinity game this year. I invite you to bow your heads with me in prayer. Our Father God, thank you for your providential grace that allows us to gather in this place today. As our representatives do the business of this community on behalf of the people of Hurst-Euless-Bedford, Arlington, Colleyville, Fort Worth, and North Richland Hills, we pray that you would give them wisdom, knowledge, insight, and compassion. We have entrusted the next generation of our communities into their hands, and we ask that you help them be faithful stewards of our future. Dear Lord, you know just how unique, diverse, and special each one of our children are, for you knew them before they were formed in the womb. Help these leaders who sacrificially give their time, energy, and passion to make the necessary choices that will best enable our kids and our communities to flourish. We ask you to encourage the teachers, administrators, and support staff who care for our kids every day. Let them know that we cherish their servant leadership. And most of all, God, we ask that you help all of us to be your instruments of grace to the children of this district, to teach them, to guide them, to challenge them, to nurture them, and to raise them up to love you and love their neighbor. Oh God, please do not let us fail the generations to come. I pray this in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Burnett. Next, we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance, led this evening by Cody Pettis and Dream Pettis from Harrison Lane Elementary School. Welcome. The American flag's right over here, and you guys can just get us started whenever you like. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag's right on the other side. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, Cody and Dream, we have a couple certificates for you. Come on, Cody.
And I get to tell you about these amazing two students. So Cody has all the characteristics of a leader. He is kind and helpful to his teacher and his classmates. Cody works hard to complete all assignments on time and does his best work. He's dependable and trustworthy. I wish everyone could know this awesome kid. Yeah. And Dream, well, this I love. Dream is a positive ray of sunshine. She works hard each day at school and then sets a goal to work harder. Dream is a good friend to all of her classmates, and to those who know her, see the beauty of her inside and out. We love having her in our school.
Tom, you can get there
Yeah,
and take a
and
picture too.
yeah, and parents, teachers, principals, anybody can get in the middle there and take a picture.
Here comes Dad. Look, they're repping. Their shirts say better.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you, Cody and Dream. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in its regular scheduled monthly meeting to officially act on items included on the posted agenda. The Board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the Board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the Board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the Board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include any charges against any employee or board members by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the Board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The Board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. All right. Superintendent's comments. Dr. Harrington?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a little information about our job fair. Prior to Saturday, our last job fair was in 2010. We made the decision in the current environment, it was time to get back into the job fair. So we had our job fair. We had 259 attendees. There were cars everywhere. It was really exciting. The principals were given a list ahead of time. Some of the principals had already reached out to some of the candidates and interviewed them even before the job fair. We had groups that stayed after the job fair and continued to interview. We already have recommendations in HR for candidates from the job fair. So we just want to thank the HR department. They did a great job. They have their recruitment task force, PR and marketing assistant, and then we brought in 2 retirees to help us. Mary Stokic and Denise Rhodes also were brought back. Hey, it takes a village, and we brought them all in. And so just really exciting to kick off the hiring season.
All right. Any clarifications?
No clarifications at this time.
All right. So this time we will review the board activity chart, and this evening I will start with Ms. Ross.
I went to Bel Air Elementary last week to read to Miss Godoy, Miss Lampier's pre-K and kinder classes. Those are my people. Oh my gosh, those little kids were so cute. We danced. Even though Chris didn't want to dance with his, we danced and we read, and they did math problems for me, and they were so amazing. So thank you to Bel Air. Always love going there. The Extra Mile banquet that we had last week was wonderful to honor all of our staff and give those awards out. That was amazing to see so many families there. I think that's my favorite part, is that they bring their families and everybody gets to celebrate with so many of our employees. And then I also attended the Education Foundation Awards of Excellence, which is always fun to honor our 33 kids that are chosen for that.
At the beginning of the month, I attended the governance camp conference in Galveston and took some special guests with me. So as the opening session for the conference, our Director of Safety, Dan Phillips, joined me, and we did a conversation about school safety for all the participants that evening. Dan was a rock star and could have stayed 3 hours afterwards with all the questions that were coming his way. He did a great job. Also joining me at that conference on Friday were 4 students from the BCTEA who are part of the EMT Fire Academy. And they gave a presentation on that program. those 4 students led the presentation and did the whole thing themselves. Now, Deborah Harvey was with them, and Dr. Jennifer Choate was with them, and of course, Dr. Harrington was with us as well. Dr. Harrington and I did literally 60 seconds, and the 4 students did the rest of the hour-long presentation, and they did a great job. So much so, I knew they did a great job, but I found out this weekend that all day on Friday, it was just all student presentations from school districts around the state. Our session, their session, was one of only 2 sessions that received a perfect 5 score from the attendees. So they did great, made us all very, very proud. I also attended the Awards of Excellence that the Education Foundation puts on every year to honor and award outstanding seniors and their mentor teachers. And I love that event so much, but what I love the most is to hear the students talking about the teachers and the teachers talking about the students. And when some of those students reach all the way back to elementary school and pull some of those teachers in as their mentor teachers, it's really incredible. And of course, we did a lot of all of us, I'll say this for all of us, we did a lot of delivering of invitations for the employee celebration the week before spring break, which was great fun. And then, believe it or not, we had a week off for spring break. And after that, I've been able to read at 2 schools. I read to 3rd graders at Meadow Creek. I read to kindergartners at Bel Air. And as I was leaving Bel Air, one of our former board members and the famous Dr. Ballou was coming to read to another kindergarten class. So we've all been very, very busy.
All right, I just have a couple more things, I guess, to add. We did have our Extra Mile celebration last week, which was, it's a great event where we recognize a lot of our support staff personnel who have gone above and beyond the call of duty. So whether it's transportation department or child nutrition, there's about 9 different categories, I think, that we gave out awards to secretaries. It's a great way to recognize all the people who are working extra hard in our district. We had a board ambassadors tour this weekend, so we took our this class of board ambassadors and we took them around. I think we stopped at 6 or 7 different campuses and got to go into buildings and kind of see conditions of things and talk about the good, bad, and ugly of facilities type stuff. Let's see, and one exciting thing that's coming up, and I'm actually last night there was a send-off concert, and the LD Bell Wind Symphony and the Central Junior High Symphonic Band, as well as the Junior High Percussion Ensemble, they've all been invited to Indianapolis this coming week to participate in the Music for All National Festival, which is something that you actually have to audition for and get invited to. And it's amazing that we had 3 groups this year all get invited to come and perform. So they had their send-off concert last night and did a fantastic job. And I'm actually lucky enough to get to go up to Indianapolis this week and this weekend, and I'm going to stay there and hear all 3 groups play. So I'm really excited about that. So congratulations to all those students and music educators who are making that happen. All right. So at this time, we're going to talk to our student ambassadors. I'd like to say a quick thanks to our greeters this evening. You may have noticed 2 students in green blazers as you enter tonight. These students are part of the HEB ISD Student Ambassador Program, which is a select group of students chosen through an application and interview process to be the face of the district. They are trained to assist with public relations and communication services and are given the opportunity to positively promote HEB ISD while developing leadership skills. Tonight we have Ethan Kellenberger, a senior, and Grant Bernhardt, a junior. They both attend Trinity High School. Good evening, gentlemen. This past year, we've been using this opportunity to hear the voice of our district students by asking the ambassadors a question. All right, and this month, the question is, tell us about a class or program you have participated in while an HEB student that has influenced or informed your plans for the future.
Is it working? Okay. So I can honestly say that at the Buinger, I took the health sciences track. I've wanted to be in the medical field since I was like in 7th grade. So I've known that I wanted to be there. and I knew that I didn't want to do hospital. So I took clinical psych, and that is a 2 or 3 trimester course that in the first 2 trimesters, you're getting all of your certifications for HIPAA, OSHA, and I think you get CPR certified. It's a lot in those first 2 trimesters. And then the 3rd trimester, you actually get it to go out to a clinic or like place of your choice and interest at that time. And so I chose to shadow a physician assistant. And unfortunately, there wasn't a PA at my office. And so I was doing paperwork and like, I mean, that wasn't what I was looking forward to do. And so all I know is that now that class influenced me to not be in a clinic area. And so I knew, well, yeah, and so now I'm working at a physical therapy place as a technician there. And so hopefully this works out.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. So for the class that I'm choosing today that really influenced my future would have to be debate. I originally started taking debate just for a speech credit to get out of the way because, you know, you need those credits to graduate. And so I go in with really no prior, like, understanding what the class is going to be like. But I get in there, and I learned it's actually a really, really fun class. The class is, you know, full of expression, and then at the same time, I'm getting taught skills like learning how to equip my ideas like through my words and stuff and talk in structured environments like I'm doing right now, so it's pretty handy. But in debate, I've only participated in 2 different events, both of which I had really no prior experience. Like I had no idea what I was going in there doing. So they sent me in as an understudy, and I went into the first one, which was a UIL Student Congress event. And so they put me in the day before, and I placed 1 place away from going to finals. And then from there, someone recognized that I had some ability to do this, and they sent me to Austin, Texas, where I competed in the Capitol against everybody in the state, basically. And then I made the same placement, 1 place above finals with only 2 weeks preparation. And so the class itself really gave me some insight on the aptitudes I might be wielding. And it's really influenced how I think my future is going to go into because career-wise, I was planning on being an engineer. And I'm really bad at math, so I don't really know what I was thinking there. But I went in, and I'm now trying to pursue something like global sales or business, and it's just been a very influential class, and I'm very blessed to really learn what has happened. So debate would be very influential.
All right. Thank you, Ethan Grant. Thanks for being here tonight. All right, next we're going to hear from the LD Bell and Trinity senior class officers.
Absolutely. We have representatives here from both schools, and they are going to give you a little delivery.
Good evening. I would first like to thank you all for your continued support and providing us with the opportunity to engage in after-school activities that are both entertaining and enriching. With just a couple months left of school, we would like to formally invite y'all to celebrate the end of our senior year with these 3 events. On the back. Yeah.
Can you all introduce yourselves?
I'm Naisha Perez, and I'm the Vice President for the LD Bell Senior Class of 2023.
Totally forgot to introduce myself, too. I'm Priscilla Chilumba, and I am President of LD Bell. Class President of LD Bell. President. I'm a little nervous.
Good afternoon, esteemed board members. It is an honor to have each and every one of you serving, and we would be just as honored to have you attend our senior events as well. And shortly, I hope you would allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Ethan Schwartz. I am the Vice President of the Class of 2023 for Trinity High School.
Hello, I'm Ilana Benton. I'm the class treasurer of Trinity High School.
Hello, my name is Sirith Naeem, and I'm the senior class president.
All right, thank you so much, class officers. Next, we will be hearing about the TASBO Award for Merit for Purchasing Operations. Ms. Hollander.
Absolutely. Our business operations team was awarded an award at the TASBO conference, and I've invited Dobie Williams up just to tell you a little bit more about this award.
Well, the first thing I'll tell you about this award is what TASBO stands for, because some people may not know that. It stands for the Texas Association of School Business Officials. Texas school districts face ever-increasing pressure to use funds effectively and efficiently, comply with the regulations, and set the standards for how to use taxpayer dollars. The Award of Merit was established in 2009 to recognize Texas school districts, open enrollment charter schools, and education service centers that are committed to following professional standards in the acquisition of goods and services. TASBO evaluates the award criteria each year to ensure it represents the latest best practices. They then review the new and recertification applications. And for 2023, only 71 school districts in the state met the stringent criteria to qualify for the award. And I'm proud to say that HEB ISD Purchasing Department was one of those to receive this award for the 4th year running.
While they're getting their picture made, they were awarded this at the conference, and they were presented this award in front of all of the districts in the state. And for those of you who don't know, there are 1,200 districts, so 71 out of 1,200 is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Purchasing Department. Congratulations. All right, next we will hear about the Trinity Wrestling All-State Athletes. Mr. Fielder.
Thank you, and good evening. We're here tonight to celebrate a couple of our female wrestlers from Trinity High School for their outstanding achievements. First, let me tell you that in the 6A division, there are 249 schools, and most of those have wrestling teams. And these two girls, you figure many wrestlers per school that compete, and these two girls rose to the top. On February the 18th and 19th, they were in Cypress, Texas for the state wrestling tournament. Now, keep in mind, to get there, they had to first qualify through the district to get to regional, and then regional to get to state. So it's quite a process and very grueling, and obviously these are very talented kids. So first we have senior Azana King. She is the state champion of the 145-pound weight class, and she went 43-2 on the year. Next, we have sophomore Jatoya Coates. She placed 5th in the 152-pound weight class, and she was 45-6 on the year. These two girls obviously went to Cyprus to represent Trinity High School, and the two of them alone, their combined scores earned them 9th place as a team, a two-person team, 9th in the state. So that's outstanding. I would like to introduce Coach Clark. If you'll recall, in 2020, Coach Clark brought us a team state championship, and now we have another state champion. And Coach Clark's going to add a little bit to what I explained.
Coach Clark, before you start, I'd like to know where they're going to college and if they're going to wrestle in college.
Well, Jatoya is only a sophomore. She just started in November. That's
So she'll be back the next 2 years.
Yeah, she's going to be a two-time state champ. Azana is still weighing her options. She's got offers from all over the country, so we're just weighing them out. She's supposed to go to South Dakota this weekend. She was down at Shriner a few weekends ago. She's going to check out Texas Wesleyan, so she's just keeping her options open.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. A few more things. After state, I took both of them up to Omaha, Nebraska. Azana became the first female national champion in HEB history. And that was her second All-American. She was a preseason All-American, so this was a second All-American for her. Jatoya took 5th in her age bracket, 16 and under, and was battling it out. So she became an All-American 16 and under. She was battling it out with the juniors, and she broke her foot a few matches in. So that's where that happened. Azana was also awarded the Award of Excellence recipient. She's the 3rd female wrestler from Trinity to get it straight. And then they're also members of our 2nd straight state duels championship team. So that's our 3rd state championship since 2020. That's our 2nd back-to-back state duels championship. So thank you for having us.
That's the trophy, right?
No, that's her national trophy. So in wrestling, it's a big deal to get a stop sign. As you can see, it's an octagon. So everyone show the other medal. So that's Jatoya's medal. She was clinging a little bit. But the other 7 on the podium only got the little round medals, but the champion gets the big stop sign. So in wrestling, if you ever hear she's going for a stop sign, that's what they're going for. So
That's awesome.
thank you all.
Wait. Yeah.
So, Coach, how many teams did you have at your tournament this year? I know you had quite a few.
We had 73. We were the 2nd largest tournament in Texas. We missed it by 8 points.
Okay.
Congratulations. All right. At this time, we will pass out certificates of appreciation for donations that were made in the previous month.
So this month's grand total is $32,892.45. And like we like to say every time, without our community partners, our nonprofits, and our faith-based, we can't do what we do in public education. So thank you to these donors. The first one is going to be presented by Board President Matt Romero, Meadow Creek Elementary PTA to Meadow Creek Elementary in the amount of $16,892.45. That will be used to upgrade the audio in the cafeteria for student performances and for district and campus professional development. Is Ms. Rodriguez here? I didn't see her. Do we have a PTA person from Meadow Creek? Diantha? Oh, look, she just happened to be here. I spy a PTA mom. The next certificate will be presented by Board Member John Jordan Wells. It's Mid-Cities Fine Arts Foundation to Trinity High School Choir for $15,000 that will be used to support the Trinity High School Choir program in their consistent pursuit of excellence. Mr. Chandler and the officers of the Mid-Cities Fine Arts Foundation will accept the certificate of appreciation. Lucinda Mooney? Yes. Next certificate will be presented by Board Member Andy Cargile. It is Brackett and Ellis to the Public Relations and Marketing Department, $1,000 that will be used for the Better Together Employee Appreciation Program, and Ms. Hollander will accept the certificate. Oh. Oh. Thank y'all so much.
And as Ms. Ross said, we can't do all the things that we like to do in this district without the support of the community. So thank you so much for those donations. We are ready for open forum number 1. In no cards? Okay. Then at this time, we will proceed into closed session pursuant to Texas Opens Meeting Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to sections 551.071 to 551.074. All right, at this time, the board is reconvening into open session. We are down to our consent agenda. Does any board member have any item from the consent agenda they want to remove? All right, then I will accept the motion.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the consent agenda as presented. Please vote. It's not gone through. Everyone's shown voted?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, please vote in favor of, if you're in favor of the consent agenda. All right, so we are ready for reports and presentations. Does anybody have questions on the disbursements for the month of February 2023? All right, any questions on employments, resignations, and retirements? All right, we are ready for district survey results. Ms. Hollander and Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. I want to take this point of privilege to let you know that Dave is the one that has really spearheaded this whole process, and he's extremely knowledgeable about this information, so I'm going to let him share this entire thing with you.
Hello. So welcome to our annual presentation of survey results. This year we moved our 3 surveys to January, February, so we didn't run into asking people the same questions or similar questions that the superintendent's listening tour may be asking. We extended our survey window just a little bit because we had inclement weather in the middle. We wanted to make sure that schools could fit the student surveys into their schedule. And we're going to look at students first. Thank you, Ty. But I want to give you some kind of top-line stuff that you can be watching for as we step through. There are several alignments to our strategic plan throughout, but I'm going to tell you those up front. We have Quality Indicator 3.3, BCD, asks if our staff and our students and our parents find HEB to be a culturally proficient organization. Quality Indicator 4.1, DEF, asks those 3 groups if they find our schools to be safe. Quality Indicator 4.1 G, H, and I ask the 3 groups if we have a discipline management plan that supports safe and orderly learning environments. And then we also ask all 3 groups if they find us to be an overall positive organization or we are achieving positive results. We have one just for staff, Quality Indicator 3.4B, that do they find professional development to be meaningful, relevant, and applicable. So those are important to our strategic plan. And the top line is our student results. We had some dips, and we'll explain why we think that might be. Our staff results were pretty stable with some ups and downs, some opportunities there, and then our parent results were up pretty much across the board. So I'll try to point out highlights. There is a lot here, so slow me down if you want to, but otherwise I may go kind of fast. So this is our students. We focus on grades 6, 8, and 11 to try to protect instructional time for the other grades. But what we think has happened is you'll see a little bit of a dip here. In 2019-2020, about 41% of the total results came from junior high students. Over time, the junior highs have asked more and more of their students to take the survey just to get more input from those students and because it kind of works well with their schedules to have a whole class take the survey. So what we think we're seeing, again, 2019-2020, we had 41% were from junior high students. This year, about 50% of our student results came from junior high students. So what we think we're seeing is what junior high students are more likely to see. And I'll point out a couple places, but we think that lines up with some of the specific dips that we're seeing on the student survey. So this is overall our student opinion of the district. These are new questions. We asked some new questions on the staff survey about well-being, so we wanted to ask some very broad questions to students so that we could start getting maybe some comparison data over time. On a lot of these, we asked our survey vendor what their insight was, and they generally said that we have amazing results across, compared with organizations across the country, and they did say it's expected for students to rate emotional well-being a little bit lower than physical well-being, so that was not surprising to them. Here you start to see some of the dips that we think could align with your typical junior high student and the challenges they face. But you will see that that last one, I'm treated with respect by teachers, is still very high. And then on the next slide, treated with respect by administrators is very high. Where we sometimes see the dip with students is where they are, whether they feel as confident about the respect they get from other students. So that is not a new thing. Still have high responses from students on how they learn best. And on the student survey...
Dave, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, we get to see these numbers, but actually, since we're a data-driven district, we actually don't get to see the school's data. So this is 67% on my data folder. We don't know which schools those were, and which, there may be some 90s, and there may be some 40s to make it 67. How do we know as a board that you're working to improve that if we're the checks and balances for the district?
So this is a district level report, you're right. Once we go through this, we do try to dive in deeper into school data and work with our
How do we
principals
know
on that.
that you're doing with that specific schools and the objectives and goals you're setting for that school?
I mean, if you're asking if you can have access to the campus, yes. I mean, it's just, this is the district level, but
Right.
once we have a chance to dig into the campus level, but we review all of those also, but yes, we can.
Can we get a copy of that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So here to point to the one that you're calling out, the 67% on data folders, we do know that we are seeing a dip here on the student and on the staff. Part of that could be there's opportunities with data folders, but in some of those initial discussions we already had, the schools may be calling the data folders something different as they've moved into a digital setting. So there could be some confusion about they're doing data folders, but they don't realize that.
Right, but somebody have 90s that we don't know about.
Exactly. Yes.
But we're judging the whole district on a 67.
Yeah, I know when I was looking through it, the data folder stuff jumped out at me too, because it was on the students and it was on the teachers. And that kind of goes to the core of continuous improvement, from the education side. As far as the way that we've been taught it as school board members, the data folders are extremely important. So when you see that dip, it is concerning.
Right.
Yeah, and we've already noted that, and we're going to have to sit down and re-examine data folders, but also it's what Dave was talking to. As we've talked to some of the principals, it's also terminology. We're using different words now. They're not calling them data folders. Is it just getting into being too literal? So we're going to take a good hard look, but we also have to make sure that everyone is clear on the expectations.
Are the data folders still paper, or are they all now on campus?
And that's it. There's all kinds. I mean, there are some that are still paper. Most have gone digital, and so that's what we're thinking could be some of the issue, but also it is time for us to possibly re-emphasize some of those processes and then have technology go through with everybody to make sure they fully understand. Here's how you can use a digital format for that.
If we discover that it's, simply that we're calling it different things, can we then on this question say data folder, comma, whatever the next word is, comma, whatever the next name of it is?
Yes. Yep. So when we work with K-12 Insight to set this up, they help keep us in line in terms of, are we going to break the data? Are we going to break the comparison data? Generally, for something like that, they are very open. They've let us make small changes like that and keep the comparison data in line.
Yeah, we make too many changes and then that question re-baselines and then we don't have, so then like as Dave has shown you a couple individual questions, some of those are not new questions, but they're changed how we're asking them, and so they're back, they're going to
But there may be times when changing the question altogether is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we're willing to make that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. But that is a good thing that we are, as you can see, monitoring on the data folders. Here is students rating their teachers, still very high. And our students rating our cultural groups, a little dip on some of these, but still very high. This is one where, kind of to your point, we changed the answer choices here based on a recommendation from K-12 Insight on all 3 surveys. So we don't have comparison data because the answer choices have changed on this one. And looking back a few years, that the change in the 4-year numbers here line up to when we gave students more options to choose from. So they may have switched to, well, I'm going to go to medical school instead of saying 4-year. Code of conduct we ask every year. We ask about blended courses every year. This is a new question asking if they're involved in at least one club. In more discussion, we may be able to pull this from some other data that the school district has access to, so we're going to see if it's still useful to ask this question in the future. And that is our student survey results.
They've also thought about on the Club One branching it, and while there are some elementary activities, really we're looking for those clubs at that secondary level. So we may separate that, ask it just elementary, and then ask it secondary. I think it'll give us a little better data.
All right, next is our staff, and this is pretty steady. We see some growth and then a couple dips like this data folders that we mentioned before. On all of our surveys, there is a slight decline in participation, and I'm very mindful of that. I asked K-12 Insight about that, and they are not concerned. That lines up with what they're seeing across the board, but we are watching that quite a bit. This is one of our strategic plan questions where we're looking for 90%, and here we've got a 95%. This is from our staff again. This one in particular, K-12 Insight points out I am proud to work for HEBISD. They said, that's incredible. Did not think that was possible. Stay the course, you're doing well. The person that we talk with at K-12, it's a new person this year, but she said she was a former teacher, and she said, if I was going to be a teacher again, I would look at working in HEB, just to give you characterization that she was telling me when we were processing through these. We do still have a high score for I feel safe in my workplace. High scores here. And high scores for customer service experience of our staff. And these start to get into some of the principal or supervisor questions, and you see good scores there. And more. And more solid scores for administrators and supervisors. We split the job training questions. This is the professionals, and there's a little bit of a dip in that first one. It could be, I know there's a lot of obligations associated with things like reading academies. It could be a reflection of that, but still very high. And this is auxiliary employees rating their training and professional development very high. Building and grounds, it's the same 3 questions on all 3 surveys. It's a little higher here than it was for students. And some very strong scores here that we're very proud of for meeting the needs of cultural groups in our community. HR, still exemplary scores. And more professional resources and support, still very, very high, increasing across the board. We ask our staff how they want to receive information. This is generally the same as in the past, and we do focus on email and text when we're pushing out information to staff. The rest of these questions, or most of the rest, are for classroom teachers, so about half of our folks answered the rest of these. There's alignment on our school mission and grounds, or our school mission and goals. This was one of the other dips we noted, the second one. Some of the dips seem to line up with a time question. So when you ask this school's teachers communicate with one another to make student learning consistent across grades, it's very easy to picture a teacher saying, of course I want to do that. There aren't enough hours in the day. So you see that on some of these types of questions. And then meeting the needs of students, diverse learning needs of students. And then strong here, we're both with students who are struggling and students who are excelling. Some of these, we see the data folders dip, and we see that time part. I use data folders with my students. It's the data folders dip, and there's not enough hours in the day, maybe. We have a couple new questions about well-being. These are from our Gallup well-being workforce book, asking what rung of a ladder you picture yourself on. There's a little bit of benchmark data in that book, and that puts us at the upper end of the scale. On this question, a 7, 8, 9, or 10 is thriving. And then we also ask, what rung of a ladder do you see yourself on in 5 years? And an 8, 9, and 10 are thriving on this, and there's a lot of optimism there too. Those are new questions for us. And then we can look, if there's no questions, we'll go on to our parents. Again, the parent results are pretty high across the board. That's right. So this is one of those 90% that we're aiming for questions, and we hit 90% on the rating of our quality of education. Some of these questions are just for parents, some are just for community members. So this one is just parents, and generally lines up with what we do. They want to hear email, they want to hear announcements through text message, they want us to push announcements out to them. So that's what we do. We do hear some concern from parents who, if we were to only post important stuff on Facebook, they would feel like they missed out, so we don't do it that way. All the important stuff gets sent out by email and text. And then this is our general community. So this is not parents. This is the other folks who took this survey, who answered a few of the questions. And they are interested a little more in social media and web. Return on tax dollars. This was another one that our liaison at the survey vendor called out. She said 93% finding positive return on tax dollars. That's amazing, is what she said. Great improvement here on parents saying we are meeting the needs of our community. And most of the rest of these are going to be just parents for the rest of these questions. Again, we're aiming for 90%. That looks like a 91% for overall quality of schools. Quality of instruction is very high. Increases on academic preparation. The survey vendor called out this first one. She said timely communication from teachers is a really hard one to hit on the survey, and we did great. Grades kept current in our online systems. Parents can get conferences when they request them. We're seeing exceptional academic growth from parents. Some of these don't apply to all students, so not all students have another teaching adult in the classroom with them. Similar here. School environment, we have strong results, a lot of increases here. I want to call out this last one. Students are safe in this school. To have a 4 percentage point increase the year after Uvalde is a pretty big deal. These are questions we ask for our family engagement department. We added a couple new ones. We ask this every year, what are the potential obstacles that keep you from going to events? And this stays fairly similar, but it helps us stay aware of what the obstacles could be. Transportation, our parents of students who ride the bus rated it very highly again. Building and grounds, our parents gave us the highest scores out of all 3 surveys. And again, this is our new, my child belongs to at least one club, organization, performing group, or team question, which does line up with what the students said. These are some required questions for Title I schools. And we asked some gifted and talented questions that generally lined up with the previous year. I think there was like a 1 percentage point increase across the board on these. We also asked some net promoter score questions. This is not a normal 0 to 100 grading scale kind of question. Our survey vendor told us that she doesn't think she's ever seen a school be in the green on this, and we are always knocking on the door of being in the green. So we are doing very, very good here. And then we actually, for the first time, this is a comparison for our parents, because we had that data, but for the first time we split out the non-parents and asked them a similar question and still had a very high score, almost knocking on the door of the green for that. And that is our parent survey. So that is all three. We will work on getting some more data to you all about the schools. But thank you very much.
I had a question. Have you all been through any of the written responses yet? Has anything stood out to you?
They tend to be pretty similar. I love that students now tell us they want to be streamers on YouTube in their career choices. Nothing alarming. We get a lot of celebration of the diversity of the district, so that is a message that a lot of people get. I have not spotted anything specific that jumped out. I mean, we get building and grounds, we ask specific questions there, and they do give us a report that breaks down by school, so we can hand that to maintenance.
Yeah, when you package up the school-specific survey results, will you also include the written results? Y'all did that for us last year. I think it was helpful.
We can, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Dave. All right, facilities planning update. Mr. Williams.
Okay, we are here tonight. We're going to present to the board a facilities planning update. We're going to do this in two parts. First part, we're going to ask Mr. Dan Phillips, our safety and security coordinator, to come up and give you some information about safety and security in our facilities. And in the second part, I will ask Susan Smith with one of our architects, Corrigan Architects, to come up and fill you in on where they're at and give kind of a progress report. Dan?
Good evening. I'm going to point out this is the first time I get to go before Holly, but that's because Dobie's name was up there and not mine. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. So this is what we presented to the Facilities Committee last week. Most of this is information that we've already presented to the board, but for them as a group to hear what has changed in the last year from TEA and from the Texas School Safety Center, I think was very important. As all of you know, because we started with some of the grant information that came out in January, and I have discussed it at some of the other meetings, but just the new implementation of safety standards that the state is putting out. These are all the standards that have not been put into law yet, but they are attached to the grant money that's coming, and we know that they're part of the standards that are in front of the state senate at this point. So we are going by the fact that since they're releasing state money and state grant money, that this is going to be the standard for the future. Every meeting that I have been a part of, everyone agrees that these are going to be the minimum standards. The random intruder audits you're very familiar with. We've been doing that since the beginning of school, but just explaining to them that this is going to be the standard for the future. That is what we've heard, that it has been successful this year, and it has provided all of the school districts to have opportunities to look at what they're doing and to make adjustments on a regular basis. So what we foresee the Texas School Safety Center doing is continuing with these audits from now on. I imagine that next year they'll be on a more regular schedule, but I would expect us to have anywhere from 4 to 5 schools audited each month, and I think that's a great thing. It's a good thing to keep us in check, and it's a good thing to show us what's working and what's not working at our campuses. And then how does it affect our facilities, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So these are going to really be in the current bill that's out in the grant money that was sent out to all the school districts. These are the primary categories that they're asking us to address. Primary entrances, which include vestibules and single points of access for schools, fencing. They are requiring 6-foot perimeter fencing. Right now, they're just doing that for the elementary campuses. I don't know if that will change in the future for junior highs and high schools. But they are requiring 6-foot perimeter fencing for junior highs. Exterior doors, electronic locking, and the window safety films on those. So as we have discussed before, the access controls at all exterior doors for our key cards, that's where I expect the state to be in the next 3 years. I don't know if that means that our students will be carrying access control cards within 3 to 5 years, but there's already schools that are doing that right now and school districts that are doing that. It does provide a lot of ease for us for being able to control. I mean, you look at some of the situations that we've already had this year of, especially with extracurricular activities with band and sports, of kids arriving early, kids arriving late, having to have doors propped open is what has been done in the past, but now requiring staff to be there, having kids have access cards to be able to get in and say which hours they can go in and what doors they can go in makes it a lot simpler from us from a security standpoint. Communications and infrastructure, the silent panic alarm technology, which is one of the grants we've had out, and our stuff that we are just finishing up the RFP for the visitor management and emergency notification stuff that meets all of those standards. And then again, access control on all exterior doors, as I just mentioned. The door numbering, we have already done that on all of our buildings and all of our exterior doors. And then the storm shelters, other requirements. Every school, our elementaries have it, our junior highs have it. Every school that's built out from here on is going to have to meet those standards. So these are the standards that, looking at, obviously, with a lot of older buildings in our district, it's very, very hard to meet some of these, if not impossible, on some without just starting over. And that's the fact of having 50 and 60-year-old buildings. In some cases, it's just hard to get these buildings up to the requirements that the state's asking now. And I'll talk about in a minute just how that affects each of our campuses. On the intruder detection audits, you're very familiar with these, but just letting the facilities committee understand that this is what the state is looking at. How hard is it to access our campus? How are we checking our exterior doors and securing them? Verification that the school administrators are doing the weekly door checks. And again, 98% of the teachers and administrators that I talk to, somebody is checking those doors typically twice a day. They're being checked in the morning, they're being checked in the afternoon. And we have been able to develop, even though that's not the standard that has been asked, that's the type of employees and administrators that we have that are really being vigilant about that. So we have seen the exterior door mistakes, human mistakes, go down dramatically over the last 3 months. And that is because these doors are being checked regularly. There's still some mechanical failures that happens, but I'm hoping with some of the things that we're implementing over the summer with redoing some of the doors that are just worn out, that those will be fixed. And then the interior classroom doors, as you know, we are already addressing that over the summer, of changing those so that they are no longer doors that will lock or unlock. They are just locked doors that you have to unlock with the key. So those are what's being inspected. And then how does this affect our facilities? So for our elementary campuses, the ones obviously that have been built, the last 4 or 5 new facilities, especially the last 2, they're meeting every standard. Some of the ones that were built 5, 6 years ago, we're having to correct some things, add some cameras, add some access controls, but for the most part, they've been designed really well, and they are meeting the new standard the state's asking for. Same with the junior highs. Aside from the fencing that we don't really know what they're going to do yet, most of the junior highs, except for activating the vestibules and then adding the vestibule at Hurst Junior High, they're working well. Keys High School, that's just a changing. It is what it is. It's an end-of-life facility, and I think everybody's aware that there's going to be changes on that. LD Bell and Trinity are the hard ones. Right now, when the state is looking for single points of access for schools to go to, even if you put a fence around Trinity, we want students flowing in through one major vein where they come in through the mornings, and that's where they check in. Even if we have 2 or 3 doors open, trying to get those students to come through one single point of access is what the goal is. What I foresee, is technology has already changed since we were looking at some of the metal detectors 6 months ago. They're getting better and better. I actually foresee that as they're pushing towards single point vestibules where we can have 2,200 students access through the doors at the beginning of the school day, that they will be scanned in a way that we haven't seen before. It's not putting up the metal detectors like we're traditionally used to, but it is putting up these programs that are scanning for high-density weapons. So right now, Bell still has 2 points of access. Trinity maybe has 22 or 30. I don't know how you define, because you got 11 buildings and there's access to all of them, but it's very hard to secure. The fence will make a difference. You know, and in presenting to the facility committee, my opinion on whether the schools need to be torn down or redone, that wasn't there. I just said from a security standpoint, having a school with 20 exterior doors as opposed to 115 is a lot easier to secure. And so those are the things that we're looking at. We had a lot of good questions, a lot of good input. And, you know, you guys know, as a Trinity grad, I love the way that the campus is. I love the open atmosphere. I don't want to see that change, but I think that the current layout that's there is very, very hard from a security standpoint for us to get to where the state's asking us to go.
Are there any exceptions because of a campus set up that way that they are allowing?
I anticipate, especially like with our elementary schools, there's 4-foot fencing on most of them in areas, and there's going to be some grandfather clauses on that. They have not gone in any direction stating that if your campus is old or special. I would anticipate that we as a district would have to put together a lot of requests for why we need to leave it the way it is.
And we've already had an audit on Trinity, is that correct?
We have. And the discussion from the auditor was she's never seen a campus that would be that hard to secure. She said that was by far the hardest campus. She goes, I don't know how you would do it except by building the fence. We said, we're going to build a fence, and she said, and then even building the fence with that many exits and entrances, she goes, this would be a very hard place to secure.
All right, any questions?
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Dan. Now, the architect update.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Happy to be here to do an update for you on everything that we've been up to for the last several months. Really briefly, I just wanted to talk to you about, we've met with a lot of people. We've gotten a lot of input. We've heard a lot of conversation. We've met with leadership. We started with the leadership and talked about goal setting and guiding principles. We've talked to administration. We've talked to directors. We had several meetings, visioning meetings at each campus with faculty, with parents, with community, and with the students. And we took that input and we further met with the faculty on programming. We met with every single department that we could meet with to find out what their spatial needs are, what sort of spaces they needed, adjacencies, that sort of thing. And we took that back and we started to develop some concept options for each campus. And once we had those options with our program, we went back to the campuses again. And we met with the faculty again, we met with the students again, and we got feedback on all those. And then we've met with the administrations, directors, and the principals, and we've gotten feedback on all those. And so we were going to talk to you, show you a little bit about some of the feedback that we got initially from the campuses. And then from that input in our concepts, we are scheduled to go next week to the committee, the facility committee that you charged with looking at the facility needs next week. And so then we'll come back to you with more in April. But just briefly, when we talked to the leadership, we talked about goal setting, and we went through a little process to come up with some guiding principles. And this is what your executive leadership came up with about the guiding principles that they would see regardless of what happened at the high schools for the high schools. And number one was student wellness, looking at the health and well-being of the whole student. Learning with a purpose, so a focused learning environment that was holistic and inclusive and impactful. Future focus, developing 21st century needs and looking for the evolving needs of the future. And safety, a safe environment that's welcoming for all students and staff. And so our process with the leadership, these are just some of the ideas, the focused ideas that came out of that meeting, and we've got one of these for each of our groups. So you can start to see the consistency and the repetitive things that may come up. This is what the leadership wanted: engaging innovative spaces, flexible, collaborative, a collegiate environment, safety. Safety you'll see come up on a lot of them. Future focused, opportunity for all, and connected to the community. The community theme you'll also see repeated over and over. And we've culminated these between both campuses. So this is a faculty, and this is LD Bell and Trinity. We have separate feedback from each one of them, but we saw the consistency in the things that were very similar on the two. And so this is what came out of that. They were looking for innovative, student-centered spaces. Your faculty is very focused on the student. Flexible and collaborative spaces. Comfortable and inviting. You'll see inviting shown multiple times. Safety, again. Reflection of community, future-ready, and adaptable. So that flexibility comes back into play. The parent groups, the parents were looking for, this is the culmination from both, technology-rich, innovative again. You'll see innovative over and over, flexible and collaborative, so that flexibility is very important for everyone. Inviting, open and inviting, safety again. Improve new facilities for fine arts for LD Bell. And then reflection of community pride, again, that community, and embracing diversity and equity for all. You'll see that kind of a theme, that equity for all. We did split out the student groups because they were a little bit interesting, and then we've got a combined slide as well. So LD Bell, they were looking for spacious. Of course, they focused on the science labs. Those are all very undersized. Flexibility, again. Inviting was another word. They looked a lot at their wellness. So outdoor learning was important. They've got the little bitty courtyard. They wanted that connection to the outdoors. A lot of the students talked about personal space, space for prayer, space to decompress, and that emotional wellness component. And then indoor spaces and improving of natural lighting, especially for that school. Accessibility was noted. That's almost a one-level school, but the accessibility is for everyone is not there. And then improved athletic facilities. And, of course, student restrooms was a pretty big key at Bell. The Trinity students, again, spacious classrooms. Their classrooms are undersized, so that interactive, flexible space for classrooms. Their wellness, they talked about green space. They love green space, but they want a usable green space, not just the lawns, something that they can really interact with and engage with. Indoor lighting, natural lighting was important. Flexibility and collaboration, again, high-tech space. They talked about improved both fine arts, auditorium and fine arts space. They also mentioned upgrading of athletic facilities. And then the public entrance, public use spaces, again, that goes back to that connection with community. And then campus safety was mentioned. So this is the culmination of both. The students are looking for spacious classrooms, flexibility, immersive technology, outdoor learning spaces, connection to the outdoors, natural lighting, improved facilities for fine arts and athletics were important to both of them, inviting space, accessibility for all, and again, that flexibility and collaboration. So when we took all of that input together, we kind of came up with, these are the themes that we saw that your community and your students and your faculty are looking for their high schools. One is modernized and timeless, forward-thinking 21st century spaces, integration of future-focused technologies, elevated educational experiences, a collegiate environment that inspires success, that flexibility we saw over and over again, adaptable, modifiable spaces that can meet with those changing needs, natural lighting, giving students and faculty a visual and physical connection to the outdoors was important, and variety, having spaces that can serve multiple needs, multiple size groups, and different activities throughout the day, And then, of course, improve facilities for athletics and fine arts. So what we've done is we've taken all of these, we've got conceptual plans, we've gone back to the campuses for those plans, and we are set to present those to the committee that you charged next week. And so after that, we plan to come back to you in April with those plans, and we're able to show anytime you want. It was just thought that since you charged the committee, that'd probably be good if the committee got to see and have input on those, and then bring that back to you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions from some parents asked me. I have no idea what the answer is. They want to know what the difference between the construction you're looking at and tilt wall construction. I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Well, we haven't really decided what the construction.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, tilt wall is a big concrete. You basically pour a big chunk of concrete on the ground and you tilt it up into place.
Tilt wall's how they build those big warehouses for Amazon.
Yeah, it's not the best for energy efficiency, and we don't see it very often in schools. We have done some, but it's pretty rare. So I'm not quite sure.
One person in the community said it was good for like for tornadoes, and it was a stronger building, like for tornadoes and.
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay. I'm just telling you what they said. My
Okay.
other question is, are y'all looking at solar and maybe geothermal for our schools?
Solar has not been discussed. We can always discuss that. Geothermal, I don't think will work here because of the phasing that we're going to have to do. There's no space to put those well fields, and we'd have to put the well fields in first to get the buildings going up. And we don't have, we're phasing things over time to even have the room to put in the new buildings. You know, we have to kind of create an empty chair. And so I don't know that there's space for the geothermal. We've done hundreds of geothermal schools. I don't know that that is going to be possible here, but that's absolutely something that we'll sit down with Josh and discuss, but I don't know that we have the room for it.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
I have a question. Thank you for coming tonight. You've been spending a lot of time with us recently, so thank you for the work that you've been doing. I want to piece together some of the information that we've received over time and ask you some questions about it. When you spent time with us in October at the facilities meeting that we had as a board, one of the presentations you gave us, which was really in-depth and very helpful, was an evaluation of renovation versus replacement. And we walked through a couple of scenarios. One was when to have the bond election, if we were going to have a bond election, and that was November of 23 or May of 24, and how price escalation is affected based on time periods. And then we also looked at comparing costs of renovation to replacement. And we looked at cost of renovation versus replacement at both Bell and Trinity. And the cost of renovation compared to replacement for Bell was 95%, such that we could, the cost to replace, or the cost to renovate, is 95% of the cost to replace. And that really informed our discussion of, do we look at renovation and do we look at replacement? If the costs are so similar, it does make sense to replace because you are spending the same and can get new and improved. And the cost of renovation versus replacement at Trinity was 93%. And so, the way it was really pitched to the board was, these costs are so similar, in the 90 percentile, that the board was comfortable with saying we should really focus on replacement. Do you agree with all of that?
Yes.
Okay. I was at the facilities task force meeting on Wednesday, and the numbers comparing replacement to renovation have changed. What was presented to the facilities planning task force is that the renovation cost versus replacement cost at LD Bell moved from 95% to 79%. And the renovation cost to replacement cost at Trinity moved from 93 to 81%. There was also a discussion that construction escalation costs are affecting renovation and replacement at the same rate. And so my question is, what has happened between October and now where these numbers are moving away from each other?
Okay, so when we met in October, what we had done is we had gone through and done a scheme on what we felt would need to be done. What we showed at the committee was basically just if you were to renovate what you had there and bring it up to the standards of what a new building would be, what those costs would be, versus in reality, some of those pieces that we showed you in October were shown to be replaced. So that academic building, that academic area that's just all load-bearing masonry, was shown to be replaced. So there was a slight difference in the cost. The way that the other group was showing keys, it was showing it a similar way where they were showing just the renovation. So we didn't want to not be consistent with what they were doing for that one, even though in reality that one would need more to be replaced. So for example, you know, a lot of the stuff in the fine arts, it was shown at a price that, you know, if you were to renovate it, you know, what it would take. But in reality, I don't even think you can do that because the stage is just too small. So, you know, if we need to go back to the committee and show them, you know, those different stages on what they actually would need to do, we can certainly do that. It's just we wanted to be consistent and didn't know we were providing that percentage until the last minute, so we wanted to be consistent. So really, in October, what we showed you was realistically, it was leaving the athletic area and everything else was being replaced. Where when we went to the committee, we put in a renovation number, but in reality, those costs would be so high because the existing building is load-bearing masonry. So it still wouldn't be a good investment to invest your money in that load-bearing area.
Some of those renovation costs would be more than new, and so they included the full cost of renovating, even though that would be higher. Is that what you're?
Well, what we did is just simply put a renovation cost. So basically, if you're taking it down to the structure, is essentially what you would do, but it's not even a good investment to do that. We were just trying to do an apples to apples to what was being done at Keys. And so the one that we showed you in October was in reality what you would need to do, but even then, you're leaving the athletic area. So I understand that the inconsistency, I understand your question, and I'm not quite sure that I'm answering your question, but we were just trying to do an apples to apples with the Keys.
Well, I'm not sure that you are there, and I think that we may need to spend some more time with this because it's vitally important that if there's a decision that's made on a replacement versus renovation, that the numbers that are given to the board and that the numbers that are given to the public are exactly the same.
Okay.
Because if we are running around town saying the costs are basically the same, and the 50-member committee is running around town saying they are at least approaching a 20% difference, if it can be explained away, that's fine, but we shouldn't have to do that, especially here at the outset. We've got to make sure that the information that we're getting and the information the public is getting is comparable and double-checked, and everybody knows what they're talking about. Because when you have a slide that says replacement versus renovation, that's all anybody sees. And they've got to be the right numbers. And so I think I would like us to spend some more time with this on replacement versus renovation, especially if it's going to come, you know, the facilities task force has 3 more meetings and then it's coming back to us. We've got to be confident in the information that we're giving in order to make a informed decision on renovation versus replacement.
That's fair, and we will provide that information to Dr. Harrington And so we'll put it in we'll put it in an explanation that we can review and then include when we present on the 5th, so that we're all on the same page.
I think that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
All right, any additional questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, reading 3D and M-Class Math, middle of year report. Dr. Norgard.
Good evening. All right, I am coming to you this evening with our middle of year report on reading 3D and M-Class Math. This is tied to, of course, early literacy in our strategic plan. And beyond that, in particular, when you are looking at your required examination of evaluating and improving student outcomes for monitoring that academic performance in early childhood, because all of these reports tonight, all of this report tonight is about our K-2 students. Just some reminders, this has not changed from beginning of year, but just those of you that have seen this report for several years, we're used to certain terminology. We no longer have EDEL. The Spanish fluency measure is now Lectura. So you will see in some of the graphs, I've had some dotted lines because that's implying as we're looking at our history, just as Dave shared in looking at K-12, if we change things too much, we lose our history lines. So I just wanted to highlight that there has been a change when you look at last year to this year in that test. Dibbles changed last year. And then also the comprehension portion, we have made a change. It was changing already in Spanish, as we did with fluency, and then also this was feedback from our teacher focus groups to really look at when we're talking about comprehension, we don't just want answers to prompt questions, they need to be comprehension conversations, which is deeper and takes more time and really is helping us understand where is a student truly understanding versus getting some correct answers to comprehension questions. So the new acronyms that we like to use a lot of those would be BAS, Benchmark Assessment System for our monolingual students, and SEL is our Spanish comprehension measure instead of TRC. So when I look year-to-year comparisons, so different groups of kindergartners, this year would be at the bottom of that graph, we'll see this year's kindergartners are performing at the same level at the same point in the year as last year's kindergartners. We see a huge uptake on the Spanish fluency measure, which we also saw at beginning of year. So there were some changes put into place with this new fluency measure, plus some things that we have really worked. One of our ESSER positions put in an additional person for support on our bilingual side, particularly working at K-2. So I think it's a combination of those two things, a new assessment and some new support that we are providing for those K-2 bilingual teachers. These are the goals that were set on last year's kindergartners end of year. So based on last year's kindergarten end of year, we said we want this year's kindergartners here at end of year. So the fact that we are holding even with last year's middle of year would say we're in a good position to hit that end of year target. Just remember, these are always moving targets. You know, what you have to do at beginning of year to be on level versus where you should be at the middle of year and then end of year, those keep ramping up. So we need to continue seeing that movement. So, yes, I'm sorry, Mr.
I don't know if you want me to ask a question now or on this slide, since the uptick on the Spanish for the 92% plus 40 is awesome. Is that a new test or how are we comparing that?
Yes, Lectura is a new fluency test.
So how are we comparing that for a 40% increase? Or is that?
Well, y'all like to see green and red arrows, but yes, it is a different test. For this, where I'm looking at the cohort history, for these students, they've only ever tested on Lectura.
Right.
That was comparing to a previous year's. So that's why I give that context at the beginning, that it is a new assessment.
Okay.
You'll see when I get into first and second grade, you'll see a dotted line on the Spanish to cross over from last year you were testing in EDEL, now you're testing in Lectura. So it is a different test. In some ways, we'll be establishing a new baseline, but in other ways, we are talking about fluency. You know, the way in which we're measuring it might have changed, but we don't need to necessarily throw out those data points either. We just have to have an awareness that the test has changed. So here is where we see growth, and the fact that these lines are going up means we're closing the gap because if we just kept all the same students achieving, we would have been, our green line would have been at 56, the yellow line would have stayed at 83, but the fact that they're going up, we're closing the gap towards those end-of-year targets. For comprehension, previously, since our English and Spanish were both on that TRC assessment through Amplify, we've always reported those as a combined result. So what I'm going to track on the trend lines is the combined measure, but I did just break down so you can see both our English and Spanish results separately, but where we're tracking our students. Fluency is very different. The phonics of the Spanish language versus English, very different. When we're in comprehension, we're talking about, what are our students understanding? We bring those results back together. So we can see the target for this year, and while it does look like, wow, we're still a ways off from that end-of-year target, we're, again, above where last year's students were at middle of year, and that target was set on those students. Okay, comprehension from where this group of students were at the beginning of the year to the middle of year has fallen. We see this every year with every cohort, because you'll see it when we get to first and second grade. You'll see in their kindergarten year. And one of the best explanations I can give you may seem oversimplified. These are young children. And in fact, one of the last times that Dan went after me, he's like, I just learned that kindergartners are 60 months old, because I made that comment about our kindergartners are not that far removed from where we used to measure their age in months. So when you remember how young these students are and the development that is taking place in them, the tests where they are looking at beginning of year to middle of year, we have just historically seen this dip. They're not there yet, but they are by end of year. And you'll see that V kind of pattern in any of our cohorts when you look at their kindergarten year. So we never like to see a line go down, but it's not the first time we've seen that. What we want to see is, I get knocked down, but I get up again. They're going to come back up and hit that end of year target. Our first grade, we do see in both our English and Spanish that we are seeing improvements over last year's first graders, where they were at the middle of the year. And so we can see that those targets, while a ways away, we are on track, making comparisons to last year to reach those targets. So here you see a dotted line in that yellow line, because yellow is tracking our Spanish students. So it was a different test. And for this group of students, those tables were comparing them to last year's first graders. This is compared to themselves, where they were when they left kindergarten testing in Adele versus where they started first grade and now middle of year. We're seeing actually very consistent on Lectura there. So when we look at comprehension, when we look at the combined results, we are seeing a slight increase over where our first grade students were performing in comprehension middle of the year last year and our goal target. So now when I look at this history, these are first graders, but what we just talked about at kindergarten, there's that pattern, that mid-year comprehension. There's high expectations for where they're going to be. They're there by end of year. Just a lot of them developmentally where they are in their understanding is going to come by the end of the year for them. I did include a dotted line on comprehension because, again, for this group of students, they were testing in TRC last year, and now they're BAS or SEL for the Spanish side. For second grade fluency, we see slight improvements over last year's second graders at mid-year. So we're working towards those end-of-year targets. See a little more up and down, particularly for our students testing in Spanish. Again, usually each year we're going to have slightly fewer students testing in Spanish. More of that happens as we get into our star grades than at K1 and 2. But you'll see actually for this group, their DIBELS has been fairly consistent since their kindergarten end of year. Little up, little down, but a fairly flat fluency line. Then when we look
Dr.
at...
Norgard, can
Yes.
I just interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
On the number of students being hired, does that mean that we've got more newcomers in this grade level?
I don't know that I'm said number of students.
Oh, I thought
higher.
that's what this number was over here. On
These are no, that's the target. The star is the target. I was saying we might sometimes as we move through the grades, particularly more into star grades, we have fewer students testing in Spanish. I don't know that you may be correct. I haven't looked at those numbers. We may be up in our total number of students testing in, total number of students enrolled in our bilingual education in second grade. On the comprehension side, we have seen a small drop in the combined comprehension. We had had a big gain the year before, so we always look and work on that. I'm going to talk in a minute. We have a slide about, so what are we doing with this data? So here is our target for this group. So again, you can see comprehension, that kindergarten mid-year drop is pretty consistent. This was a change in the assessment. That's why it's a dotted line from where these students left first grade to begin their second grade year. But they have grown. So while we can say this group in this table, we're like, oh, well, they're down compared to last year's second graders at middle of the year, but they've improved over their own performance. That's why we look at this data both ways, because it tells two different pieces of information for us. So what are we doing when we see dips, and how do we keep going on the strengths? We made a shift this year from curriculum previews to what we are calling instructional planning sessions for our teachers. And in the ELA instructional planning sessions, and we have members from our ELA team here tonight, they are really focusing in that training time with teachers on how to target individual and small group interventions that will close those gaps between middle of year and end of year. Some really specific techniques in our STAR grades. We frequently talk in the spring about bridging to STAR. How do you take what you've learned all year in your classes and show that? So they're bridging to EOY. Here's what you've been doing all year. How do you make sure that we have closed those gaps for our students and best prepared them to meet those assessments? And then also our team goes out with campus support, maybe helping with data analysis, lots of time spending watching that guided reading where those interventions are happening, observing, giving the teachers feedback on how we can make those opportunities most effective. Any other questions about reading 3D? Well, let's jump into math, which of course is aligned to our strategic plan for early numeracy, and again, student outcomes that you are charged to follow as a board. Okay, context. M-Class Math is still a relatively new assessment, and it paralleled its debut, came out with this requirement of we've got to be watching early numeracy, early literacy. I have mentioned, I think, every time that I bring the data to you that we continue to ask the vendor to review the performance thresholds. I've talked with you about reliability versus validity. Are we consistently measuring? Is it reliable versus validity, but are we measuring the right thing? And we really feel like looking at our data that the cut points that M-Class Math has put on some of these assessments, their timed assessments, how high can you count in 1 minute, and the thresholds that they're putting don't seem age appropriate to us in all sections. So we are actually, I've already been talking with Ms. Adcox, our elementary math coordinator, and Dr. Allen to look at some research, because now that we have a couple of years of M-Class Math data, and how does that carry into our MAP data that we're also doing, or STAR alignment, do we need to come up with some of our own thresholds? Because we do feel like it is consistently measuring. Students are moving along a continuum. It's just, is it realistic where on the continuum they're expecting them to be to hit proficient? So there is value to continuing to use it. It does show movement for our students, but the numbers just don't seem realistic compared to how we know our students are actually performing and competing. Because we're seeing this upward trajectory. It is consistently measuring, and we are consistently getting better, but we feel like we've got more than 45% of our kindergartners performing at a proficient level. The goal based on last year's kindergartners for end of year would be 50. So, but here, look how they've improved from beginning of year to middle of year. This is, strong data. We are moving them. We just want to be sure that the actual number, not just that it's going up, but are we showing the right number? We captured all of our kids that really need to be represented. We see improvement at first grade. You see they're almost right at the target. So we've seen growth there, especially when you look at where did they start in kindergarten. And then, of course, our second grade math data, very close to the goal. These students have kind of flatlined right now. There are some elements introduced in the second grade test, as we're starting to move more towards what's the reasoning, the problem-solving ability. So that adds another layer. It's not just about how high can you count, can you compare two numbers. It's really moving into doing things with the numbers. So a little bit higher level skills there. So we're going to continue. You had a rather lengthy report from our math team a couple of weeks ago where they detailed these things. So I don't need to detail all of that for you again, but just reminding you that our elementary math team is working on making sure the experiences that our students have is aligned not just to here's what I've done with this skill, but here's what it looks like in an assessment. And then supporting with data meetings and observation feedback. But we are going to continue to review those thresholds and cut points. So we may be coming to you next year. We don't want to change midstream, but saying we're going to add some internal, our district level thresholds once we have more data. And we would certainly explain to you, we will not pick numbers. You know, this is not we're going to throw a dart at a dartboard or roll the dice. This would be looking at our historical and trend data. What do we think are the appropriate cut points since the vendor has not yet made any of those adjustments? Questions about math?
Any questions? All right. We can move on to the next report, Reading Academy update.
Yes, good evening. I'm so happy to come before you this evening with a report. All right, this time I am coming to you with an update for Reading Academy. There was already once this year that I was looking at bringing this to you, and just a few days before I was going to take it to executive leadership, I'll pause for, the surprised gasp that TEA changed the rules. So I've updated my update before I even got to you. You may remember last spring I actually got to you with an update and had to come back again. So it is only March. You might see me again, but here's where we stand now. Of course, Reading Academy also tied to our early literacy goal. Some reminders of where we are. We are wrapping up year 3, which according to the original rollout of House Bill 3, this is where all of our current teachers need to be trained by the end of this year. If they are in a K-3 classroom, they need to have completed or begun their cohort. They did extend that. It needed to be completed by the end of the 22-23 school year. The language was changed to enroll in a cohort that began. So we have one that will roll into next fall because we put our veteran teachers in a cohort that began in July. We had a new option last year from TEA to wait and actually launch a cohort in January, and we decided for our new to HEB teachers, and especially those new 0-year teachers, they needed time in their classroom. We didn't need to immediately be pulling them out for all this training. We wanted them in their classrooms. So those students will continue their cohort into the fall for that last group. We were local implementation, so we are using our own staff that have been certified as Reading Academy cohort leaders. The shift we made last year was to blended. We have been doing comprehensive because we felt like it was the absolute best support for our teachers. But last year there was some additional clarification given to those who are doing a local implementation of blended that we thought, wow, we can really maximize on this, the best of both worlds. We pull our teachers in on the units now that we've had a couple of years history. They struggled with this. Let's be sure they come in for this one versus this one. The teachers all kind of flew through. Let's not pull them out of class. They can work on that one on their own, and we provided a stipend for that work that they were doing on their own time. We sent our bilingual teachers because we do not have a certified cohort leader locally for bilingual, so they all went to Region 11, and so we made sure that was comprehensive because we could do our own version of blended. Blended through Region 11 would have been entirely online, and we wanted those teachers to be sure that they had that full in-person support. So we started off with a plan that it had worked so well with this local implementation of blended that we were going to continue that with a slight shift. We are now entering this last year of the original implementation. New teachers coming out of their college programs are all to be graduating with a Science of Teaching Reading certificate. That doesn't mean they get out of Reading Academy. It means there's a different path to their Reading Academy. So the Science of Teaching Reading was more on the theory. The Reading Academy is more about the practice when you're actually in a classroom, but it's briefer. So we planned to put any new coming to us through a Science of Teaching Reading track, which would be a little bit shorter than that full, but we wanted our local implementation blended. Then earlier, TEA said, you know what? Local implementation's not good. You're all going to have to come to us. So at that point, our only option for teachers still needing to complete would be to send them to Region 11 through one of their blended or comprehensive cohorts. We couldn't have our own anymore. But then they thought some more and decided that, wow, when we look, those that did blended in that typical blended the way the region would do it, not our local implementation blended, wow, they're not very successful. Comprehensive is better, so everybody's going to have to do comprehensive. So there's no blended, but so when they took away that option, they came back and said, but we can't cover everybody on comprehensive, so we'll let you do your own local implementation again. But it's got to be comprehensive. So we can't do that local implementation blended that has really worked well for us this year. So this is where we've landed. So what does it mean for our budget? Well, we don't know exactly because we won't know until we're done hiring exactly how many of our new K-3 teachers are going to need this. So these were some estimates. Since we are continuing with the local implementation, there's one cohort fee that will cover up to 60 teachers. We're thinking maybe 30, looking at our typical number of new K-3 teachers. We will need the salary for that cohort leader. And we originally worked this up with substitute pay for 10 days of release when we first switched back to comprehensive. But actually, if we're able to do a comprehensive science of teaching reading, we won't need all of those sub-release days, but we were just trying to make a conservative estimate. So if we have 30 students, this would be our amount. But again, that cohort leader could take up to 60. So just because this has 30 in this presentation does not mean if we have 32 teachers, we've got to come up with an entirely different plan. Our plan just costs us a little more money. So for our bilingual teachers, though, we will need to continue to utilize Region 11 with a comprehensive cohort. So this is that amount. We were estimating, looking at our numbers, that at the most 5 teachers. Hopefully our turnover is even smaller than that. And so, questions?
Any questions on reading academies? All right, thank you. Summer school report, Mr. Streeter.
You gonna get it? Okay, thank you. Good evening. In just a few moments, Holly will be right back up here to begin our presentation. However, I want to let you know that this evening, you've seen this report many times. It's just kind of an overview of what our 2 summer schools for both elementary and secondary. It's kind of the logistics, this report, and it'll also go over some of our additional summer programs and enrichment. I know that some of you may be curious. If you recall, a few weeks ago, we presented to you some information that Lauren Allen has shared with us regarding our effectiveness of summer school for elementary. We will put together another report for you in the next few weeks that really gives some of the meat and potatoes to what will be offered at the elementary school. We just have started gathering all the teacher applications, and I think we're just now getting to the point where we can actually share that information. That is not included in tonight, but we will have that for you shortly. Any questions before we get started?
When you say teacher applications, what do you mean?
If you recall, we had our teachers submit proposals. I should have used the word proposal as opposed to application. But they had proposals for ideas that aligned with Hattie. If you recall, we talked about the Hattie's effect size. Okay. Any additional questions before I turn it over to Holly? Okay, Miss Holly.
Thank goodness I got to sit down. I was a little worried I was going to be standing here all night. You were probably worried I was standing here all night. So, while not the meat and potatoes, I've got a menu for you. So a little idea of how these things are coming together. So, Mr. Streeter already kind of alluded to this. So based on those studies from Dr. Allen, we are looking differently. Nothing about our secondary is really changing at this point. It's really the elementary that we've done this study, because at secondary we're into credit recovery, not here are the students that we picked and how we want to approach them. So one of the biggest changes that you heard from, in particular, the 3-5 report. When the K2 report, we just came and said what we're doing isn't working. We'll come back with what we should do. At the end of the 3-5 report, Dr. Allen shared the Hattie's research and things we wanted. So we did go out and have asked teachers, as we have done with some different programs in the past. We used to have a STEM summer camp where teachers would submit proposals. This is a great activity I would love to share with students. Here's the learning, here's the structure, the lesson plan. So we've had the same thing. We have reviewed and are in the middle of reaching back out to those teachers whose proposals we want to move forward in this time. But it's not just those teacher proposals. We are looking at, for our K-5 students, this is not about TEKS remediation. It is not, you could not do 4.2C, so let's spend a lot more time with these blends or these sounds in your reading, or you need to work on multiplication, whatever those are. It's really about enrichment experiences, which Hattie's research tells us will move us in all of those ways. So for our K-5 students, they will have opportunities during the day to interact with PE, music, and art. Many of those things will support the TEKS and the alignment. There's so much that you can see of math and music and art, the movement, how it stimulates the brain, crossing the midline, all of these things. We will have STEM and library time because we also know from Hattie's research that just engaging, spending time in text, or having someone read with you is valuable. But also, we have made our libraries the center of our STEM activities. And in fact, we had a meeting today talking with our math and science coordinators and our STEM coordinator for the district, talking about what will those activities look like? Where can I put my hands on things? You've had opportunities to see STEM, to play with things from the think tank, but it will be purposeful. It will be not just build with Legos, but, you know, build a building and then tell me what % of your building was red, or those kinds of things where it's really tied to some math skills, but it had that free exploration. And then these teacher-developed courses. So the other slide I have for you is really just reference from in years past as we've moved to this what's online, what's in person. So really the difference being in K-5, it will be in person. There will be some technology that may be needed in the STEM, et cetera, and all the rest are as they were previously. So I'm going to have Ms. Clark.
Good evening. Great job on that, Holly and Conrad. I'm just going to follow up with the pretty much the nuts and bolts of elementary programming. And as Conrad mentioned, we will come back to you and share the details of what those courses are going to be this summer and some more information I think you'll really enjoy hearing about. So for our kinder through second grade, our participants will be those that did not meet the report card standard, as well as missed thresholds on our Reading 3D and M-Class math subtests. Again, you know the focus is enrichment. There's the dates. We are switching to a Monday through Thursday. Last year we did Monday through Friday, so we're going to go back to Monday through Thursday for a total of 15 days, and those will be half days. And our locations will be Arbor Creek, Bell Manor, Shady Oaks, and Trinity Lakes. Transportation will be provided. These will be the locations for the summer dining program, and of course, will be no cost to our students. For third through fifth grades, again, students who did not meet report card standards will be invited to attend, and they didn't perform well on their MAP test as well. And you'll notice last year we used STAR results as part of our criteria, but we will not have STAR results this year in time to make that part of their criteria. And we thought about using the DBAs, but actually we have found through Dr. Allen's research that she did for us that our MAP scores actually correlated more closely with STAR than did the DBAs. So we felt like that would be a good piece of information to look at for these students. Again, the program dates are the same. There'll be 15-day half days at Arbor Creek, Bell Manor, Shady Oaks, and Trinity Lakes, and all the same information on the side there.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Well, I don't think it's very common. Is it possible someone does well on the maps but doesn't do well on their report card? And
That's a great question.
And if
Mr.
so, are they
Campos.
not required to participate in this?
Okay, that's a great question. So we may have some students like that, but we will get the input from their teachers, those that know them best. And as you know, it's really hard to look at any one single data point on a child, so we'll take all the information into consideration if they're going to be invited. Great question. For our ELP Summer School Early Language Proficiency that we have every year, that's actually a legislative compliance piece. The focus is language acquisition. It's those students that are leaving pre-K and kindergarten and are emergent bilingual students. The dates are the same. However, they go 120 hours. Like I said, that's legislative compliance, so a little bit different. They do go all day instead of half day. This year, that will be at Oakwood Terrace Elementary. We're going to utilize our beautiful new campus for that, and transportation provided, summer dining included, and no cost to our students. Our elementary language enrichment for grades 1 through 5, those emergent bilingual students whose TELPOS data shows they need additional language development, we're going to include them with the students at Shady Oaks Elementary for enrichment But there will be a piece of their day that's focused on also language enrichment, but we really believe that letting them participate in all those rich activities that we're going to plan is going to be really great for them and for their language development. That is also a half-day program. Any questions about elementary before I turn it over to Brandon? All right, thank you so much.
I had one question, Darla.
Sure.
So on early language proficiency, maybe I'm not entirely sure what that is. Is that kids who are only emergent bilingual?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's narrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
Awesome. Well, good evening. I am here to talk about secondary programming for summer school, and just like she said, the nuts and bolts, many of you have experienced this because we have no changes. We just changed the dates and continue to refine our process moving forward. Just to kind of start out and talk about the satisfies HB 45, House Bill 4545. We don't know what the legislature is going to do, as you know that they're shifting in your advocacy. However, we designed it prior to this coming summer to satisfy HB 4545, and so if it still remains, we'll be in good shape moving into the fall as well. And so for 7th and 8th grade credit recovery, these are kids that did not meet our promotion standards through board policy, focusing on the 4 core areas. We have 2 sessions, one in June, from June 12th to 23rd, and then session 2 is June 26th through July 7th. We have 9 days set up. So basically, things are set up to where we also pad some hours in the event of sickness, illness, and things like that, where we will still be in pretty good shape should the student not be able to attend for a specific reason. So that will happen at Trinity High School. We're projecting 250 students per grade level, and the registration fee is $35 with $125 per course. Transportation is provided, and so is summer dining.
I just want to say that I don't think that even if there are changes coming to 4545 with the current legislative action, I don't think it would go into effect this soon.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So for 9th through 12th grade credit recovery, this is online only, and these are students who didn't pass specific courses, and they will take online courses through Edgenuity. Same session 1 and 2, transportation and summer dining are not provided and not needed due to the online nature. 9 days, and same registration and per course fees. And students can take, just like the previous credit recovery, students can take 1 to 2 courses per session. Credit advancement holds the same. These are students who are seeking to add credits, and they can pick up to a max of 1 credit. They can take Edgenuity course online, 9 days, same registration fees, and we anticipate 150 to 200 students as well. And then looking at summer EOC intervention, we've got a pretty quick turnaround, as Ms. Clark mentioned. We basically are going to get what they deem as preliminary results for students who were not successful in the EOC, and we will have to turn around those results very quickly and get kids registered. So we have a communications plan in place so that those parents are aware of what they may be facing should their kid not pass the EOC. And so those dates, program dates, can be from June 5th through the 23rd. We have 10 days, and then we have 4 days of testing with that and 3 hours per subject, and that'll be at Bell High School. And we anticipate projected enrollment to be 500 students. Transportation will be provided, and so is summer dining. Okay, so for our secondary language academy, these are our 6th through 12th grade students who are needing additional language development, and so the content focus is language acquisition. The program dates are June 12th through July 7th. and they'll end up going for 3.25 hours per day for 18 days, and that's at Trinity High School. Transportation and summer dining is provided, and this one is no cost to students. So before I turn it over to Mr. Streeter, are there any questions about secondary programming?
The credit advancement one, is that still limited to pre-AP IB students? No? That's different? Okay.
Yes, that's further down.
Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Before I continue with my part, I just want to thank our entire team of ed ops, but also a lot of people who support this. Brent Langham, Marie Becker, Lauren Allen. They do a lot of work behind the scenes to make summer school effective. As you know, the last 2 or 3 years, our summer schools have been larger than they've ever been, 1,700 kids. That is an enormous amount of work to put together during the school year, and also with some of our legislative uncertainty, it's a moving target, so our team is really working hard to anticipate those the best that we can. So I just want to thank them, as well as Brandon, Darla, and Holly for all their hard efforts. So just very quickly, extended school year, ESY, we know that that's for our special education students, and that's reviewed by an ARD. And they will be meeting from June 5th through the 29th, 15 total days, and that's going to be at Bell Manor. And we have about 60 kids, and again, we will, of course, provide transportation, dining, and there is no cost. And Renee has done a great job of helping us organize this as well. Our Camp Invention, that's grades K4, and those are our kiddos who are identified as GT or highly capable, and that's July 10 through 14. It's 5 full days. It's a longer day, 6.5 hours. Those kids are really excited to be there, and we really push them. And that'll be at Bell Manor, and again, we're looking for about 100 students, and Cheryl, again, has done a great job of organizing this. There is a fee for this, but there is, and no dining and no transportation are provided. For Invention Project Middle School, that's our upper grades 5 through 7, GT and are highly capable, thank you. GT enrichment, and again, 5 days, 6.5 hours. That'll be at Central Junior High, and about 50 students we're expecting for that. For IB Summer Academy, okay, this is what you were asking, Julie. So required credits to maximize IB scheduling. That's for our kiddos who, it's really hard with that IB schedule to fit everything in. And so a lot of times we'll see upwards of 200 students participate in this. It's 4 hours per course. They can take 1 or 2, and it's 5 to 8 days depending on which course they're taking. And that's a pretty minimal fee at $30 per course. And we are providing some dining for that, but no transportation. These are high school kids. Our grade 9 students identified based on PSAT and 8-9 scores for our superintendent scholars. Super important program as we grow our students and really looking at this, and so that's 3 hours per day. There's a morning and afternoon session. Our 100 students is pretty normal to what we project, and again, there's no cost to the students, and we will feed them as well, and that is for 8 days. I'm a big fan of this program, and I hope we continue to expand that. It's good for our kids, and it's good for our district. Superintendent's Merit Scholars, those are our grade 10 students who have been identified on the PSAT or NMSQT, and that's the National Merit Scholar Potential. That's June through October. That's a college prep program, and we have about 60 students. And remember, there is some reimbursement with this. They are charged $300, but they get $200 back if they complete the program. They also get the materials, if I recall correctly. Our global initiatives for Chinese and Arabic language learning. There is no cost, no summer dining, and no transportation, and it's for our grades 5 through 10. Students interested in taking Arabic or Chinese, it's our International Business Initiative language. And you can see the dates there, May and June, 6 days each. And they're 3 hours, and that's at Central Junior High as well. And we're projected about 60 students.
For the kids that are there like for 6.5 hours and there's no dining, do they just bring their lunch?
Yes, that's right. They bring their lunch and often snacks are provided. But that is not one of our campuses that we're serving lunches. We've talked to Marielle, and they don't have the staff to do that. But this is normal for what we've done each year.
This is the former Star Talk, and so as we had to convert it to our own program.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to cover some of Kira's slides for her this evening as well for our STEM and summer reading. Always good stuff. So HEB Reads, it's just around the corner, May 20th, so through July 31st. And we will have our big kickoff event on May 20th at Pennington Field from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We hope to see all of you out there. We'll be there for sure. Last year's event was huge, and we had great weather. Take and Make Tuesdays. This is another great thing that we've been doing. It's the STEM kits to go with the think tank, and they offer that for, oh, hi, Kira, we were just talking about you. June 6th through July 27th. We have multiple stops scheduled, and it's 30 minutes per stop. And if you notice that we align those with where summer school's happening, so fairly strategic there at our 4 campuses, and you can see the times there. And again, just a few weeks ago, I saw our think tank out here in the parking lot and kids coming up after school. It's really wonderful to see that. Our Mars rover expedition, as Kira would say, if you haven't been there yet, you need to sneak by at least once this summer and see what the hard work these students are doing. It's pretty intense. They stay focused for the entire time. It's 6 hours a day. It's at LD Bell High School. We have about 100 kids, 50 per each week, and Kira is working really hard to recruit those kids so that we have them, and we maximize those 50 seats per week. And it is a fantastic program, really pushes the students' thinking. And finally, that concludes our report, unless you have any questions that I can address or someone else on our team.
Questions on summer school?
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Streeter. All right, we're down to action items. No items were removed from the consent agenda. So item 11.02, consider approval of notice of general election, May 6th, 2023.
All right. Back last month, February, the Board of Trustees called for an election on the May 6th general election date. Now that the deadlines have passed for candidates to file, withdrawal, et cetera, we're now to the point where we must post notice of that election, official notice in a publication. So what you've got before you is a request to approve that notice to be placed in the April 13th edition of the Star Telegram for places 1, 6, and 7. That notice will obtains the early and election day voting locations and times and that type of information.
All right, any questions on this notice? I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the notice of general election on May 6, 2023 to elect Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District Board of Trustees for places 1, 6, and 7.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the notice of general election on May 6, 2023 to elect Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District Board of Trustees for places 1, 6, and 7. Please vote. See if it goes through this time.
It does.
And that motion passes. All right, consider approval of resolution declaring the construction manager at risk, two-step process as the construction delivery method for the future construction projects. Mr. Kerbo.
Mr. Romero, Dr. Harrington, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present this item to you. As you know, our resources for our current construction campaign are dwindling quickly, even such to the fact that we've dipped into our fund balance to complete Bel Air Elementary. So it's time to start looking at our alternative planning for and resources for what is on the horizon. So step one of that process has already begun, and as you know, Corrigan was hired to do the assessments of the 2 high schools that we've heard about earlier tonight. So at this point in the process, we would recommend that we have the board declare the construction method of the construction manager at risk for the construction delivery method, along with the evaluation criteria, relative weights for any future construction projects. The advantage to doing this at this point, and how it differs from the competitive sealed proposal, competitive sealed bid, is that proposals and bids are done generally when the specifications and drawings are totally complete and vendors have the information in which they can solicit their subcontract bids and put together a proposal for that. At this point in time, we're nowhere near completion of that, and the architect has expressed an interest in bringing in a construction manager to help in several other phases related to the design portion of that. 1, completing the design. 2, learning what is constructible instead of designing something that later to find out that we can't build that because either materials are not available or that's just not feasible. So a construction manager will help do that, determine the constructability of a project, and help establish a budget. So, and that's the number. What we're looking for is to have a number, a solid number as to what it's going to cost us, primarily to do the 2 high schools in whatever plan it is. So, to do that, the board would have to declare the construction delivery method and evaluation criteria, and that also includes the delegation of authority to the administration to receive proposals, rank them, and initiate or conduct interviews and contract negotiations and bring that to the board for action. So this is a 2-step method as opposed to a 1-step method, which is what we're accustomed to. 2-step method really simply is the step 1 is the qualifications of the prospective construction managers. And that's how this selection process is established. It's we want to base our selection on their experience and their competence in the field of construction management, particularly of projects that are of this size and scope. Step 2 will be then to bring in the top-ranked proposers. We don't know how many it will be. It depends on the number of responses we get. Bring them in, interview them, learn more about their approach to the project, what their plans are, how they foresee the projects being constructed, and how they plan to manage those. And then we would receive a price proposal for what their fee structures would be. And so that's it in a nutshell. Any questions you may have about the process, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That helps me a great deal. This is not something that in my tenure on the board we've done before. In your experience, is this something that other districts have done on a regular basis, and we've just not been in that position?
Yeah, construction manager at risk is a predominant construction delivery method for projects of this nature. I've done it. I probably have done it 40 or 50 times.
So in the evaluation process, when you're interviewing the people who respond or the firms that respond, is that a combination of district employees as well as architects, or is it just district employees?
It'd be district employees and our architect, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are you looking for a construction manager at risk for both Bell and Trinity, or one for each?
That's still open, depending on proposals. We would envision that being one, though, to manage both projects. A lot of it would depend on if the resources are available from one company to be able to do that.
And is this a construction manager at risk in lieu of a general contractor or in conjunction with a general contractor?
It's in lieu of. Mm-hmm. They, in essence, are the construction, they're the construction manager, and the work itself is all subcontracted with minor self-performed duties that they can't get covered, such as, cleanup, daily cleanup, maybe some temporary fencing or things of that nature that they can't get covered through subcontract solicitations. They may be able to, or they may perform that work with their own forces.
Can you talk to the construction manager at risk and the guaranteed maximum price and how that works together?
Sure, yeah. So construction manager at risk is generally the price or the cost of it is received in 4 phases. There's pre-construction services, which is generally, it's a fixed number that a construction manager would propose to come in during the pre-construction phase, and this is where we are right now. Come in and help finalize the designs, add their input as to constructability materials, long lead times, and things of that nature. That's the lowest of the numbers that you'll see for the most part. The next is field office and staff. Who are they going to staff it with? That's where you're going to learn about their experience in the construction management industry, how many resources from a personnel standpoint are they going to dedicate to the project. In this case, it would be probably one construction manager if we're going to use one firm to do to manage both projects, but 2 job superintendents, one at each site, dedicated 100% to the job. And it's possible with the scale of this job that would be assistant superintendents that would also be needed. Other support, they all have safety officers and programs that come around and conduct safety meetings on the job sites. So that's what comprises of your field and office staff. The next is a fee for construction services. It's a flat fee, or not a flat fee, it's a percentage fee based on the cost of the work. So that cost of the work won't be determined until they do the solicitation for their subcontract bids, assemble that money or those bids together, and determine what the cost is, and then the cost of their percentage will be their fee just to manage the contract. I won't stand here and tell you what customary fee is for that, because since 2011, since about 2002, when the construction manager at risk was first made available to public school districts to be able to use as a construction delivery method, fees have varied from project to project. So just be aware it's a construction management fee that's on top of the cost of the field and office staff and the pre-construction services. General conditions are the final component of that, and those are those are costs that are related to supporting the job, such as whatever their mobilization costs, put in a temporary or a mobile office, any computers, copiers, anything, temporary fencing and things like that might be needed for the job that they would assign to or assess as part of the general conditions. And those are costs that are not picked up from the subcontractor trades. All that comes together to create a guaranteed maximum price. So what we mean by that is that the construction manager proposes to build this job at a guaranteed maximum price not to exceed whatever that number is. So your next question is, what happens if we don't spend all that money? That's all returned to the owner. So,
does that typically happen, Gary?
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. Now, there are instances where there are increases to the cost, but it's only because of a change order initiated by the owner. So there's no construction manager initiation of a change order. So if they have cost overruns that were not approved or are not approved but are essential, then they are at risk for the difference in cost and what they proposed.
So we've got a four-phase that leads to the GMP. Can you give us some sense of a timeline of what we're looking at as far as where we are right now and when we're going to get to a GMP?
The GMP will be determined when the plans and specs are completed.
100%?
Yeah, when they can solicit. About 95% is when they can go in and get those and bring in a guaranteed maximum price.
Okay. So if we're looking at a November election, are you anticipating the GMP before or after November?
Without being in any of the discussions with the architects as how far along they are in it, I couldn't tell you, but I would hazard a guess we'd probably be pretty close to that. Josh, you have any?
Well, and my question is, how does that inform the number we take to the voters? Yeah. If we get a GMP, and I imagine plus contingencies, we would know how much this costs, and then take it to the voters and say this is how much this costs. If we get a GMP after the election, and the voters has given us a pot of money, isn't it? How do we make sure that we have some assurances that the GMP isn't, oh, you've got that much money, that's the GMP?
Okay, so one thing, that's where we're at right now, you said about design services. If we do not, the reason they're coming asking to be able to bring somebody on is to try to get as close to that GMP before the November, so we can do just what you're saying. Or it could also, GMP would be the final contract that's we're deciding on, but we're also trying to get to an OPC, which is an opinion of probable cost. We at least need that as close as possible. Like you were saying, in CSPs, we generally run into those with like, we're hoping to get 90% drawings so that they can get us the most accurate. We're going in with an OPC and then get kind of a budget. We're trying to get that as closed up as much as possible, and we can't do that because, especially with rebuilds, you're talking, it's a chess game. If I move this building and start phasing here, then what utilities are in the way? And then we got to move that to be able to move into the students and that kind of, so a contractor bringing them on now is going to help us with all that, because general conditions in a situation like we're looking at with the high schools can be pretty substantial if we miss having to bring in 15 portables and build a whole little public, portable city or something like that. Or just even bringing in on certain utilities. We got to have those utilities first to be able to support the new building while supporting an old building at the same time. And so having them on in advance and helping us with that will get us closer to that, so that when we bring it to the public, we can say, this is what it is and this is what we're sticking to.
So if we are starting this process here in March, and I believe that if we're going to have a November bond election, we have to call it August, September,
Like that.
August. Do we have enough time between now and August, if not to get a GMP, to get an OPC?
That's our understanding, yes. But that says if we can complete this process, get a contractor on so that the architects can start having deeper conversations. And right now, what I kind of feel like is they're moving, but they're kind of stalling and kind of tripping up because they can't bring in those support services to really start diving down into the expensive pieces, if you will.
Okay.
Okay, so one other thing, you ask about how do we know their number's not going to come in, or whatever the number is. It's a competitive process, and it's negotiable. So those are two things in our favor, and the market is ripe for construction managers, and we have a number of them lined up that are eager to compete for these projects.
I don't know how to ask this question. You say we have a number lined up. Are any of them known to us? Have we worked with them in the past, even though we've worked with generals before, so I'm confused.
They're the same.
A good number of
They're the same people.
Yeah, a good number of general contractors can also do construction manager at risk,
Okay.
definitely. In fact, many of them prefer to do construction manager at risk.
Yeah, to someone who's never been through it, when you say construction manager at risk, you think you're hiring one person,
No,
but you're
it's a
actually
team.
hiring
Yeah,
a company, like a general contractor. It's just a different way to deliver. They get more upfront, and they're able to work with the architect to get us those prices sooner. Because if we had to wait until everything was designed and then put it out to bid, we wouldn't be ready for the bond election until next November.
Right.
So.
Until 2030.
It can also be like getting a running start on a job as well.
Yeah.
Something we saw with Bel Air, which it kind of played out in front of us. Two contractors took two methods to the same process, if you will. One took a straight up very hard CSP, which meant they hard bid everything, and that was it. There was no contingencies. This is how we're going to bid it. The other one took more of a CMR kind of track. While staying to the CSP, what they did was they said, here's all the things that can happen, and they had multiple levels of contingency plans. If we had been CMR ahead of time, they would have known those things, and they had been awarded the job. They would have been able to buy out the generator and all the long lead time items. They would have actually bought those out before they had needed to even get close to that. So they would have had that gear coming on the way, and there wouldn't be, you'd minimize the delays. And a lot of times you'll minimize some of those change orders as well, because they will have already had so much time to look at that. They can construct it in a way in the computer before it even gets onto the ground where we have the problem.
Good.
All right, any other questions?
That was good info.
All right, I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the resolution to declare construction manager at risk with a two-step process as construction delivery method and other required actions as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the resolution to declare the construction manager at risk with two-step process as the construction delivery method and other required action as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right. 11.04, consider approval of update of 2023-2024 staffing tables, new units.
There are 4.5 units on here on the request for tonight, and as you saw in the Friday update, only 2 of those are from local funding. The additional are from ESSER. So are there any questions about any of these positions?
Any questions on the staffing table? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the new units as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the new units as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, consider approval of the 2023-2024 employment dates of the school calendar.
So the document that you have for approval is the document that simply gives an overview of those 25 employment calendars, giving you the title of the calendar, how many days the calendar has, and then the beginning and end date. Those 25 calendars upon approval will be uploaded to our district website, and this information will be shared with all staff, but we do not provide you with 25 calendars out of e-finance that are very difficult to understand. So this is your overview document. Are there any questions?
Any questions on the employment dates? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the 2023-2024 employment dates as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the 2023-2024 employment dates as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, other business. Opportunity for board members to request items be placed on future board agendas.
I have 2 that I'm not sure they need to be board agenda items, but I've sent emails to Dr. Harrington. One was for Dr. Harrington and his team to look into putting vape sensors in the bathrooms at the secondary level. That was suggested by a principal that might help cut down on some of the vaping before it gets to a point, or at least a deterrent. So I don't know necessarily that's a board agenda item, but it may end up coming to the board. Dr. Harrington said that he would have his team look into it and see how much they were and how effective they were. And
so are you proposing it as an agenda item?
does it need to be an agenda item, Dr. Harrington?
I mean, Dan's already been looking at that, so once we have some information, we can make a determination. We just have to make sure that, the cost and then the effectiveness of it, and we're researching that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it might be, just not now.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I can bring you some information back, but I
Okay.
mean, is it something we need at the board meeting or a Friday update?
Yeah.
Friday update? Okay. The other thing is, and Dr. Harrington said that they were already working on this. Again, I don't know that this is a board agenda item, but I think we do need to have some kind of parent family engagement night. My proposal is to come from the direction of how to talk to your kids about vaping, suicide, human trafficking, fentanyl, marijuana, THC, social media, weapons on campus, and then the signals and warnings to look for. If a kid sees something, they need to say something. If a parent suspects it's their kid, they need to say something. Dr. Harrington said they were already working on something similar, but I feel pretty passionate that I think with everything that's going on, especially in our surrounding districts, and then, you know, again today, a campus lost 3 adults and 3 students. I feel strongly we need to kind of get to the heart of the parents talking to their kids, so.
So the agenda item would be to have a board discussion as to whether we want to ask the administration to do that kind of event?
Again, if Dr. Harrington feels like it needs to be a board agenda item, but I feel strongly that we need to have one.
The first part of that, Chris Brown actually connected us with Justice Wallach and a group with the fentanyl. And so Dan and Stacy Force are already working on scheduling that piece. And then we're beginning talks on what could we do in those other areas. So we've got the first one we're working on, and then we'll continue working on it. So I can keep you updated as we find the ways, you know, is it through family engagement or different ways like that?
Well, I've talked to Conrad about some meetings already. It was a concern of many parents that when Harwood starts, they have one parent meeting, you know, when school starts. And really, they should have a 7th grade meeting, an 8th grade meeting and a 9th grade meeting, and that could be done at those meetings. What we run into in high school, which they don't say in junior high, is 9th grade counts on your transcript. Those kids get to high school and they say, why does that count? It was the 9th grade. Well, they don't realize high school is 4 years. So really, I talked to Conrad about having a 7th grade meeting, an 8th grade meeting, and a 9th grade meeting for them to talk, you know, there's AP courses in 8th grade. And parents don't know about it. So that could be brought up in those meetings with those different grade levels. So that's a way of transporting that or getting that done in junior high.
All right, so do we have an agenda item to second, or are we?
Is it just in the works?
Why don't you let me work on this and update you in the Friday update, and then if we can't get to where we want to be, then we can bring it back and discuss it.
All right, 12.02, consider approval of Education Services Center Region 11 Board Election, Place 2 and Place 5. The way I understand this is that each board member votes individually for the person that they want to elect to those positions, but first we have to vote to vote. So as a board, we have to vote saying that we're going to vote on these things, and then we each turn in our individual ballots. So it doesn't make much more sense to me than it makes to you, but. No,
Are they here to
it's
talk to us?
opposite.
How do we know? How do we know who to vote for?
They sent us bios, and
Outside the bios.
Outside of the bios, anybody have any personal knowledge of these people, feelings, opinions?
I do not.
I do not, but I did make a phone call today to one of our former board members and was told that Jay Thompson is someone that she knows from past work in multiple organizations and would feel good about.
Even I look good in my bio.
Yeah, me too.
Come on.
I have a question.
You know that's how elections are.
So the motion is or is it for the second person, or are we actually saying the specific name? I don't understand. It's up the top.
I think you read the entire thing, and
With the
then
word
you,
or?
then we each turn in our individual votes.
Okay. That makes sense.
So we're basically just listing the candidates and saying that we're going to vote, and then we each vote individually, not as a board.
So when we submit it, it's submitting our individual ballots?
Correct.
To the ESC?
Yes, yeah, Ty is not going to do a count and see who got the most votes, and
Okay.
it's each one of us gets a vote.
That's, okay.
But
Okay.
I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve Rod Townsend for Place 2 of the ESC Region 11 Board of Directors and Jay Thompson or Elaine Edmonds for Place 5 of the ESC Region 11 Board of Directors.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve Rod Townsend for Place 2 of the ESC Region 11 Board of Directors and Jay Thompson or Elaine Edmonds for Place 5 of the ESC Region 11 Board of Directors. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, we're down to open forum number 2. No cards. All right, then at this time, the board will be going back into closed session.
Do you want to first everybody pass their ballots to Ty, their completed ballot?
I haven't voted yet.
Well, vote and
I'm
pass
still
them.
thinking about it.
You got a whole bunch of them. There's a blank one.
Yeah, I think that was purposeful.
That doesn't make sense. Don't even submit that if it's blank. That's ridiculous.
All right, pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to sections 551.071 to 551.074.
I think you need to pass that down. I think they need to know that 1 of the 7 didn't vote.
Goldie, I need your team to stay, the rest of our staff.
Can we take 5 minutes?
I've already taken several.
I know you have, but I haven't gotten up. Just sit there.
You're doing great.
All right, we are reconvening into open session. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Josh.